Hi everyone. Thank you for watching Dear Sharita, where you guessed it, I am Sharita. Today we're going to be talking about, I did a video previously where someone had asked me a question about my experiences with raising my son and what were the differences that I experienced, and also if I could go back and do something different as far as from when I was raising them, what would it have been? So I felt that since I did do that video about the experiences with raising my son, I felt it was only right, fair, just to come back and do a video talking about the experiences that I had as far as raising my daughter. So before we get into all of that though, if you would like, subscribe, and comment below if you have any questions that you would like for me to answer. I will come on to it and do a video about, or I can also answer your questions in the comments if you would like. So thank you for tuning in, and let's get right into the topic for today. So back to what we were talking about. My experiences with raising my daughter. So as I mentioned before, I do have two young adult children. I have a daughter and I have a son, and they were raised very close together because they were very close in age. So I had the opportunity of raising them very close together and seeing the difference between both right away because they were very young. And they did have a lot of like qualities. I mentioned in the video about my son, they had a lot of leadership skills, independence. They're both very intelligent, those sorts of things. But they did definitely have some differences, and because of that, I found that raising them, of course, was very, very different. And I had to learn this along the way. Because eventually I started out to where we were a two-parent home, and eventually I became a single parent. And in doing that, I can jump in and say this is the point where I feel like I could have probably done something different with my daughter opposed to the things that I did, because becoming, anybody that's a single parent knows that it can be very difficult at times because you're the main parent, and sometimes when you work and you're taking care of the kids, sometimes your time is very, very sparse. So with that being said, as I became a single parent, I did not have the same amount of time, not just to spend with my daughter, with either of my children for that matter. But because of that, I feel like there were things that I could have done differently, more so at that time with my daughter. We did spend time together. I did make time, but the timing was very different. We were on a very routine yet strict schedule to a certain degree because both of my children were involved in outside activities when they were younger, to include sports and those sorts of things. So we had to have a family routine that was very structured, and to keep the home flowing smoothly. But thinking back now, I could have sometimes deviated from some of that to be able to spend more time specifically with my daughter, because I think I missed some moments that I should have been starting to teach her things about being a young woman, things about what to expect, when she's having interaction with boys and all those things. We had the conversations. We did have the conversations about life and then and puberty and birds and bees and those sorts of things. But I think just specific to her in answering specific questions that she may have had, I feel like I probably should have been able to put more time aside to meet those needs for her. We did have a family outside of me, so I do think I am definitely very grateful for that. She was able to develop relationships, and where she may not have been able to talk to me about certain things, she definitely did have those influences from other family members that could step in, which I again am very grateful for, because sometimes as single mothers we just don't have that support system, but we did have a very good support system all the way around that was helpful with everything that I could have missed or should have missed. But as me being a parent, I feel like, just thinking back now, I probably would have wanted to do more. And again, we all are trying to do, or I'm gonna say for me as a parent, was trying to do the very best that I could, creating good work ethic and responsibility and those types of things in my children. So in order for them to see that, I wanted to make sure I was also modeling these things. But as they got older, specifically with my daughter, I do realize that I also did not take the time and show her even some of those things. In regards to specifics on how to manage financial situations, and also putting her in a place to where she could start the process hands-on, because I think that is very key. And now looking back, had I done that, it may have been very different for her in learning these things moving forward as a young adult. As she got older into the high school age, I also noticed that there were different things that I had to interact with her differently. I had to communicate with her differently, because there were things that, because she had been so independent, oftentimes would just assume that she knew, but she did not. So I really started to see that. I really started to learn that. I want to say in high school, where she had her first going into high school was kind of rocky, and she ended up being homeschooled for a time. And she'd always had structure her whole life. So when she got to a point to where the structure was a little more relaxed, and she had more flexibility in the way that she could participate in school, I did notice then that she needed the structure. It wasn't just I gave her structure more so because that was a part of who I was, and I felt that it was necessary for the family to function. But when that structure was removed to a certain degree, I recognized how much she truly needed that, and she started to have some struggles during that time, and I had to figure it out, not realizing until I finally figured out, okay, no, it has been the structure. She requires that in order for her to be at her best. So I think with me being around, had I been around a little bit more when she was younger, to start paying more attention to those things, then I probably would have been able to see that a little bit sooner. So that was a thing that I really did kind of wish, if I was able to go back and change it, I would definitely do that differently. And I would advise that anybody that's out there, when you have your girls in particular, just in your kids in general, your children, just making sure that you pay attention to their needs individually, because while they both did have a lot of like characteristics, they also were very, very different. And as far as learning styles and everything, whereas with my son, he he could be homeschooled and set a structure for himself and follow it. Whereas with my daughter, it was more different. It was one that had to be set for her and then monitored. So just certain things like that. I did learn that about my daughter, or learning that later on. And so, once I did, of course, I was able to be more proactive and participate more in making sure that she was able to be her best self. But I do think that it's better, of course, better late than never. But I do think that I would have, had I been, been able to see it more when she was younger, I would have been a lot more proactive then. Other than that, I also think now, just with both of my children in general, because they were so independent and they did a lot of things on their own, and they were responsible, and they did know how to do a lot of things. Oftentimes, I would sometimes assume that they knew things. Especially my daughter, I assumed that they would knew things that they did not know, and because of that, I would have to stop and think and remember, okay, she's only 9 or she's only 10, and there's certain things that she just, whether I think she knows or not, she just doesn't. So instead of me assuming, allowing her to learn these things, and also just allowing her her and my son to just be children. Because when you're a single mother and you're trying to, or a single father or parent for that matter, and you're trying to make sure that, once again, the home is running smoothly, you tend to lose some things sometimes in the cracks. And I'm able to think about that, and to be honest, some things I did not learn until after the fact. As my kids became young adults, we talk a lot, we communicate very well, so they've been able to express things that to me, that made them feel a certain way when they happen. They're able to express things that cause them to do some things that they may even be doing now, and give me the opportunity to even help them now, and also to apologize for times where I should have been there and I wasn't. And I definitely would recommend, as a parent that has young adult children, taking a time and sitting down and having a conversation with them, and just allowing them to express things to you that they never had the opportunity to express, or just express to you, when I was 12, this was going on, and this is how I was feeling, this is what I thought, this is how you made me feel, or this is how I felt. Whatever the situation is, allowing them that opportunity to express, because as parents, we see their time different than what they saw their time. So while we may think they had this great childhood and everything was wonderful, and then we were open and always willing to have these conversations, on the other side of that, your child, your teenager, your growing up teen may have felt otherwise. So I thought it was the best conversation, I believe, that I'd ever had with my 2 children, when I was able to sit with them as and continue, it's even now, as we were able to sit and just have conversations together and individually, and they tell me what their thoughts were, what their experiences were during the times that I would not have known unless they expressed it to me. Because it lets you see the perspective of what was actually going on in their minds, and then you can also share with them the perspective of what was happening from a parental perspective at that time, so that they can get an understanding, because it's especially important when they are young adults and even getting to the point where they're getting closer and closer to parenthood themselves. Maybe that having that conversation gives them more of an understanding as to what was going on as a parent, opposed to what was going on with them as a child. this also will help them in that process of being the best parent that they can be, because we all know there's no manual out there for it. Most of us, we are just doing the best that we can. We have people out here that we can get knowledge from. We have examples sometimes that we can see, but ultimately each of us that are becoming parents or have been parents, we did this as we went. And I'm just very thankful at this point that both of my children are very productive members of society, and they're still young, so they're continuing on and they're working towards their goals in life. But definitely, to have a great relationship with your young adult children, start as early as you can communicating with them so that they can learn effective communication at home with their parents, with their siblings, and then they'll definitely present this or utilize these skills outside of the home, in their school settings, in their friend circles, in their work environments, or whatever the case may be. But it does start right in the home. And it's nothing against anybody that did not have that opportunity when they're in home, because you can start at any time. You can start to learn how to communicate effectively with people around you. So that is all I had today. I wanted to be able to give you both sides of that, as far as being a mother of a son and also a mother of a daughter. Thank you for tuning in with me. If you have any questions or anything below, you can make your comments. If you like what you've heard today, subscribe so that you can get these videos as they continue to be uploaded regularly by clicking the bell. Have a wonderful day.